For her mother-in-law's 65th birthday, her son gave her a royal gift. He threw me and my two children out of the apartment onto the street right during the celebration. An hour later, my husband called in hysteria. "Card payment isn't going through. The food delivery guy is standing here." I explained it clearly to him. Good day, dear listeners. I'm glad to welcome you to my channel. I present to you a new interesting story. Enjoy listening. Estrella woke up at 5:30 as usual. It was still dark outside, but her internal clock wouldn't let her sleep longer. Too many tasks awaited ahead. She quietly got up from the sofa in the living room, where she had been sleeping for the past 5 years. The bedroom belonged to Fabian and his mother Consuelo, the children's room, to Sebastian and Catalina. And the living room was neutral territory where Estrella unfolded the sofa every night. The three-room apartment in the central district of the city formerly belonged to Fabian, inherited from his father, but in reality, Consuelo ruled everything here. At 64, she looked younger and considered herself the rightful mistress not only of the apartment, but of her son's life. "Estrelita, will there be coffee?" came Fabian's sleepy voice from the bedroom. "Already making it," Estrella answered quietly, turning on the coffee maker. She knew, in 15 minutes, breakfast should be ready with coffee for Fabian, espresso for her mother-in-law, hot chocolate for the children, plus arepa, scrambled eggs, fresh fruit. And all this quietly, so as not to wake Consuelo ahead of time. Because if her mother-in-law got up in a bad mood, the day would be ruined for everyone. 15 years ago, when Estrella first crossed the threshold of this apartment as a young wife, she thought it was temporary, that she and Fabian would soon rent their own place or save up for their own apartment. But time passed, children were born, and plans remained just plans. "Mom, where are my sneakers?" 14-year-old Sebastian appeared in the kitchen, disheveled and displeased. "In the hallway on the shelf." Estrella didn't even turn around, continuing to fry eggs. "Did you wash my gym clothes?" "They're hanging in the bathroom. They'll be dry by lunch." Sebastian grumbled something and left. He was a copy of his father, not only in appearance but in character. The same softness bordering on weakness, the same ability to shift responsibility onto others. Grandmother Consuelo adored him and constantly repeated that he was the man of the house, the future owner of the apartment. "Mommy, will you braid my hair?" Catalina was the only one who treated Estrella like a real mom. Sebastian more often turned to grandmother Consuelo, and she only rejoiced that her grandson valued her more. "Blood is thicker than water," her mother-in-law loved to repeat when she thought Estrella wasn't listening. A strange hierarchy had long been established in the family. Consuelo, the queen and main princess. Fabian, a kind but weak king who fulfilled any of his mother's wishes. Sebastian, the crown prince who was allowed everything. Catalina, the younger princess, but also grandmother's favorite. And Estrella? Estrella was something like a court servant. She cooked, cleaned, did laundry, earned money, and solved all household problems. "Fabi, will you transfer money for utilities?" she asked her husband when he appeared in the kitchen. "Oh yes, of course. You always understand these matters better." Fabian waved his hand. "You have the bank cards, you transfer it." It was always like this. Fabian was officially considered the head of the family, but all financial matters had long fallen on Estrella's shoulders. Her small advertising agency brought in stable income. Fabian worked at an engineering bureau and earned well, but somehow money always ran out quickly. Estrella took control of the family budget about 10 years ago, when she realized that otherwise they simply wouldn't survive. She had all the family's bank cards, she paid bills, planned major purchases, saved money for vacations and unexpected expenses. Fabian was only happy that he didn't need to think about boring financial matters. "Good morning, family." Consuelo floated into the kitchen in a silk robe and with perfect styling. Estrella sometimes suspected that her mother-in-law got up earlier than everyone else, got herself ready, and then pretended she had just woken up. At 64, Consuelo looked 50 at most. Regular visits to the cosmetologist, expensive creams, gym. A considerable part of the family budget was spent on all this, but objecting was pointless. "Mommy, good morning!" Sebastian rushed to his grandmother with hugs. My dear boy, Consuelo blossomed. Catalinita, come here to grandmother. The children surrounded Consuelo, chattering about school affairs and plans for the day. Estrella silently served her mother-in-law coffee with cinnamon, exactly as she liked it. Thank you, Consuelo nodded dryly, not even glancing at her daughter-in-law. In 15 years of living together, they had never grown closer. Estrella was a temporary inconvenience for her mother-in-law that had to be tolerated, and Consuelo was a constant source of stress and humiliation for Estrella. Fabianito, I wanted to go to the center today to look at fabrics, Consuelo said to her son. Will you give me a ride? Of course, Mom. I'll tell work I'll come in later. You understand how important this is? I need the perfect dress for the anniversary. Estrella winced. Consuelo's anniversary, 65 years, had become her mother-in-law's obsession 6 months ago. She was planning a grandiose celebration and talked about it every day. Mom, maybe we could celebrate modestly in the family circle, Fabian suggested carefully. What? Consuelo's eyes widened. Fabian, have you completely forgotten who your mother is? I've been at the top all my life. I have tons of friends, acquaintances, colleagues. They're waiting for invitations. No, this will be a celebration for the whole city. Estrella sighed and began clearing the dishes. She knew that the anniversary would cost a serious sum that the family didn't actually have, but Consuelo wasn't used to denying herself anything. Sebastian, Catalina, get ready for school, she told the children. Did you check your backpacks? Took your lunch? Oh, Mom, I forgot about the math test, Sebastian grabbed his head. What test? Well, I need to review the topic. Grandma, will you help? Of course, dear, Consuelo rose importantly. I was an excellent student in my time. Estrella, you wash the dishes, and Sebastian and I will study. And again Estrella was left to clean up after everyone, while her mother-in-law received gratitude and adoration from her grandson. It was always like this. When something uninteresting needed to be done, they called Mama Estrella. When games, entertainment, help with homework were needed, everyone went to Grandmother Consuelo. Fabian left for work, the children. For school, Consuelo settled in the bedroom, planning the anniversary. Estrella was left alone in the apartment for the first time that day. She sank onto the sofa and allowed herself to just be quiet for a minute. 15 years, half of her adult life in the status of a servant in her own family. She loved Fabian, but his weakness and inability to protect his wife from his mother had long killed the romance. She loved the children, but understood that they took her for granted. Mom is always there, always does everything. She doesn't need to be thanked. The phone rang, a work client. Estrella instantly transformed, became businesslike and energetic. In business, she was successful, respected, her opinion was listened to, but at home, she was nobody. The workday flew by quickly. Estrella solved client issues, controlled advertising campaigns, met with contractors. Her small agency was thriving, and she was proud that she had managed to create a business from scratch. All income went to the general family budget, which she also controlled. Bank cards, credits, deposits. Everything was in her name or under her management. Fabian had long shifted these concerns to his wife and didn't delve into financial details. In the evening, returning home, Estrella found a family council in the kitchen. Consuelo was telling something inspiringly, waving her hands. Fabian was nodding. The children were listening with delight. Ah, Estrelita came. Her mother-in-law condescendingly glanced at her daughter-in-law. We were discussing my anniversary here. Imagine, I found the perfect dress. Expensive, of course. But how can you economize on such a day? How much does it cost? Estrella asked carefully. $800, but it's worth it. A real designer outfit. Estrella mentally calculated the family budget. $800 for a dress. That's a third of the family's monthly income. Plus restaurant, treats, gifts for guests. Mom, maybe we could look for something cheaper? She suggested. Silence hung in the air. Consuelo slowly turned to her daughter-in-law, and that cold glint appeared in her eyes that Estrella knew and feared. Estrella, her mother-in-law said in an icy tone, I don't think you should interfere in my anniversary plans. This is a family matter, and you're just Fabian's wife. But the money is shared. Fabian, Consuelo raised her voice. Explain to your wife that I make the decisions in this house. Fabian looked guiltily at Estrella. Well, Mom's right. It's her birthday. Once in a lifetime, you can splurge. Estrella felt the familiar burning in her chest. Again, she was to blame. Again, her opinion meant nothing. Again, Fabian chose his mother's side. Fine, she said quietly. I understand. That's good, Consuelo beamed. Now let's have dinner. Estrelita, what did you prepare for us? And everything returned to square one. Estrella set the table, the family had dinner, the children went to do homework. Consuelo retired to the bedroom to plan the celebration further. Fabian turned on the TV. Fabi, Estrella quietly called her husband, do you understand how much this anniversary will cost? So what? We have money, don't we? We do, but not an unlimited amount. Estrella, enough! Mother is celebrating her anniversary once in a lifetime. Are you really that greedy? Greedy. Estrella, who had been providing for the family for 15 years, economizing on herself so the children wouldn't lack anything, was now greedy. She didn't answer anything, just went to unfold the sofa in the living room. Tomorrow would be a new day, similar to all the previous 15 years, and the day after tomorrow too, and in a month when Consuelo's anniversary passed. But something inside her was quietly and persistently whispering, enough. This feeling had been growing for several months, and Estrella was afraid to listen to it, because she understood. If she really stopped and said enough, then everything would change. Absolutely everything. I've decided, Consuelo announced at breakfast on Monday, the anniversary will be at the Grand Palace Hotel. Estrella choked on her coffee. Grand Palace was one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. Even a modest banquet there cost like half the annual family budget. Mom, maybe we could consider other options, Fabian suggested carefully. What other options? Consuelo was indignant. Fabian, have you forgotten who your mother is? I've been at the top all my life, maintained our family's reputation. My friends expect an appropriate level of celebration. How many guests are planned? Estrella asked, mentally preparing for the worst. I made a preliminary list. So far, it's 70 people, but I think there will be more. 70 people. At the most expensive restaurant in the city. Estrella quickly calculated in her mind and felt dizzy. Grandma, can I invite my friends? Sebastian asked. Of course, dear. Let everyone see what a wonderful grandmother you have. And I want to invite my girlfriends too, Catalina joined in. Naturally, my princess. The guest list grew before their eyes. Consuelo listed colleagues from her former job, neighbors, acquaintances from the gym, mothers of the grandchildren's school friends, distant relatives. Maybe we could still limit it to the closest ones. Estrella tried to intervene. Estrelita, her mother-in-law said coldly, this is my day. I think you can skip participating in the planning if it doesn't interest you. Fabian shrugged guiltily, letting his wife know that arguing was useless. Estrella fell silent and began calculating the approximate cost of the event. The figures were frightening. That same day, Consuelo went to book the restaurant. She returned in high spirits with a pile of catalogs and price lists. Can you imagine? They gave me a discount, she announced to the family. Only $2,500 for the banquet hall with service. That's practically free. Practically free, $2,500. Estrella felt her heart sink somewhere down. This was half of their savings for vacation, repairs, and unexpected expenses. Plus music, hall decorations, photographer, Consuelo continued listing. But this is once in a lifetime. Mom, what about the cake? Catalina asked. Oh, the cake. I saw amazing multi-tiered cakes at Sweet Dreams pastry shop. Real works of art. True, they're expensive, but beauty requires sacrifices. Estrella knew the Sweet Dreams pastry shop. Their cakes really were works of art and cost accordingly. A multi-tiered cake for 70 people would cost an amount the family could live on for a month. And we already chose the dress, Consuelo said dreamily. $800, but it's worth it. I'll be the queen of the evening. Every day brought new expenses and plans. Consuelo ordered invitations from a design studio, chose gifts for guests. We can't let people leave empty-handed. planned a professional photo shoot before the banquet started. Fabian rushed around like crazy, fulfilling his mother's endless errands. Now he needed to go look at decorations for the hall, now discuss the menu with the chef, now pick up invitations and deliver them to addresses. Fabian, dear, you're such a good boy, Consuelo cooed. A real son, making your mother happy. And Fabian blossomed from praise, ready for even greater feats. He took days off work, was late, left early, all for his mother's anniversary. Maybe enough, Estrella dared to say one evening. You could lose your job because of constant absences. Don't exaggerate, Fabian waved his hand. Management will understand. Everyone has parents. But not everyone's parents demand so much attention. Estrella, what's wrong with you? Mom is trying for the family, for the children. She wants everyone to see what wonderful grandchildren she has. There was always a justification. Estrella was always to blame with her petty objections. The children also fell under the influence of the upcoming celebration. Sebastian came home from school every day with new friends he wanted to invite to grandmother's anniversary. Can you imagine, Mom? Andres has never been to such a restaurant. He was excited. And Mateo says his parents never threw such cool parties. Grandma is the best, Catalina echoed him. She promised her girlfriends that there would be live music and contests at the anniversary. Estrella silently listened to the children's excitement and understood that after this party, they would have to economize on everything for months. No vacation in the summer, no new things, no entertainment. But the scariest thing was that the list of expenses kept growing. Every day, Consuelo came up with something new. You know, I need a stylist, she announced at dinner. The hairstyle must be perfect and the makeup professional. Mom, you have your own hairdresser, Fabian noted timidly. Fabianito, this is an anniversary. Regular styling won't do. I need a top stylist who knows how to work with ceremonial looks. Another $200 to the total bill. And I've also decided to order a limousine, her mother-in-law continued. You can't go to your own anniversary in an ordinary car. We have a car, Estrella said carefully. Estrelita, Consuelo responded coldly. Your compact car isn't suitable for such an occasion. Guests should see that the birthday girl arrived in style. Another $450. Estrella sat down with a calculator every evening and calculated the growing expenses. The figure was approaching $5,000. This was all their savings, plus they would have to go into debt. Fabi, she tried to talk seriously with her husband. We can't handle such expenses. We can handle it, Fabian said confidently. Your business is going well. It is, but not that well. After the anniversary, we'll have nothing to live on. Why are you being so dramatic right away? We'll earn more. What if something happens? What if someone gets sick? What if urgent repairs are needed? Estrella, stop working yourself up. You only live once. You only live once. This became Fabian's catchphrase in recent weeks. Any of his wife's objections crashed against this argument. 3 weeks before the anniversary, Consuelo arranged a grand dress fitting. She invited Estrella for an objective opinion, but actually just wanted to demonstrate her magnificence. Well, how is it? She spun in front of the boutique mirror. The dress really was beautiful. Dark blue chiffon, embroidered with sequins and beads, emphasized her mother-in-law's slender figure. But they were asking $800 for this beauty. Very beautiful, Estrella said honestly. Really? But it seemed to me it could be even more spectacular. Maybe we should look at other options? And a new round of fittings began. Each dress was more expensive than the previous one. Consultants brought new outfits, praised Consuelo, admired her taste, while Estrella sat in the corner, imagining how their family would pay off the loan for this one evening. In the end, her mother-in-law still settled on the first option, but she added designer shoes, a clutch, and a jewelry set to it. The amount grew by another $1,500. Estrelita, you understand how important this is for me? Consuelo said when they left the boutique. This day must be perfect. Estrella nodded, unable to speak. What could she say? That the family was on the verge of financial collapse because of this perfect day? That the children might be left without vacation and new things? That Fabian had already received a reprimand at work for constant absences? Have you already chosen what you'll wear? Her mother-in-law suddenly asked. No, Estrella was confused. I haven't thought about it yet. How can that be? You must match the level of the event. After all, you're my son's wife. Although, Consuelo looked over her daughter-in-law with an appraising glance, it will certainly be difficult for you to choose something worthwhile. Not with your figure. And again, a blow to the sore spot. Estrella knew that after 2 births, she wasn't as slim as in her youth, but hearing about it every time from her mother-in-law was painful. I'll find something, she answered quietly. I hope so, Consuelo snorted. I wouldn't want to be embarrassed by you in front of the guests. 2 weeks before the celebration, real hell began. Fabian practically moved to the restaurant, controlling the preparation. Consuelo came up with new details every day and demanded their immediate execution. The children were carried away with discussing the upcoming holiday and neglected their studies. And Estrella was torn between work, home, and her mother-in-law's endless errands. Estrella, order a taxi for Rosario. She lives in the suburbs, Consuelo commanded. Estrella, call the restaurant. Clarify about the vegan menu for Paloma. Estrella, you didn't forget to buy gift bags for the guests? And so every day, every hour, Estrella carried out all the errands mechanically, understanding that arguing was useless, while inside her a decision was slowly but surely ripening. A week before the anniversary, an incident occurred that became the last straw. Estrella came home after a hard work day and discovered that the apartment was in complete chaos. In the kitchen, a mountain of unwashed dishes. In the living room, things were scattered. In the bathroom, wet towels. What happened? She asked Catalina, the only one who was home. Grandma was trying on outfits with her friends. The girl shrugged. They brought a bunch of dresses, did hairstyles, took photos, then drank coffee with pastries. Where are Dad and Sebastian? Dad took Grandma to the beauty salon, and Sebastian went with them to then stop by the store for a new suit. A new suit! Another unplanned expense! Estrella silently began cleaning up the chaos, trying not to think about the fact that her workday wasn't over yet. She still had to cook dinner, do laundry, check Catalina's homework, and then work on an urgent project for a client. At 9 in the evening, Fabian, Consuelo, and Sebastian returned. They were excited, joyful, and completely didn't notice exhausted Estrella. Mom, look what suit they bought me, Sebastian boasted, showing a bag from an expensive store. Very beautiful, Estrella smiled tiredly. And Grandma promised me shoes like a princess? Catalina jumped up and down. Of course, my little gold, Consuelo cooed. Tomorrow we'll go choose them. Estrellita, is dinner ready? Yes, everything's on the stove. Excellent. Fabian, help me lay out the things, and then we'll have dinner. And again, no one said thank you. No one noticed that Estrella had been on her feet for 15 hours without a break, that she had a headache, that she was falling off her feet from fatigue. The family had dinner discussing the upcoming celebration, and then went about their business. Fabian and Consuelo sat down in the living room to watch a video from some distant relative for inspiration on hall decoration. The children locked themselves in the nursery discussing upcoming outfits, while Estrella again remained in the kitchen, washing dishes, preparing breakfast for tomorrow, planning the workday. At midnight, when everyone was already asleep, she sat at her laptop trying to concentrate on work, but her thoughts kept returning to the upcoming anniversary and its consequences. $5,000 for one evening. This was all their savings and a little more on top. After this party, they would be left without a penny. What if something happened? What if one of the children got sick? What if urgent repairs were needed? Estrella opened online banking and checked the account balances. All cards were linked to her phone. All passwords were stored with her. Fabian had long waved his hand at finances, entrusting them completely to his wife. You understand this better, he loved to repeat. Yes, she understood. And now she saw the full picture. They were on the verge of financial collapse because of one anniversary, because of one woman's ambitions, who had been bossing around her daughter-in-law for 15 years. 3 days before the celebration, Consuelo arranged a dress rehearsal. She put on her expensive dress, did her hair and makeup, made all family members dress up too. Now let's pretend you just entered the hall and saw me, she commanded. Fabian, you should approach first and make a toast. Fabian obediently played his role. The The children giggled but also followed grandmother's instructions, while Estrella stood aside in an old dress. She never bought a new one. There was neither time nor energy and watched this performance. Estrelita, at least smile, Consuelo said displeasedly. This is a celebration. Estrella smiled tensely, but her mother-in-law had already lost interest in her, switching to preparing the ceremonial entrance. The next day after work, Estrella found a notice of debt for the apartment in the mailbox. 3 months of unpaid bills. She stared at the paper in confusion. How could this happen? She always paid utility bills on time. In the evening, when Fabian returned home, she showed him the notice. This is some kind of mistake, she said. I definitely paid every month. Fabian blushed and looked away. Fabi? Estrella looked closely at her husband. What's happening? Well, you understand. Mom asked for money for the restaurant deposit. I took it from the envelope with utility payments. I thought I'd return it later, but somehow forgot. You took money set aside for utilities and gave it to your mother without telling me. Estrella, don't make a tragedy out of this. So what? A delay of a couple months. We'll pay after the anniversary. Estrella silently turned around and went to the kitchen. She couldn't believe that Fabian, her husband, the father of her children, had secretly taken money from the family budget. Money set aside for necessary payments. That evening, she barely spoke to her husband, and when everyone went to bed, she sat for a long time in the kitchen, looking out the window. The decision that had been ripening in her for long months finally took clear and definite shape. The day before the anniversary, Consuelo was in high spirits. She walked around the apartment humming something to herself, trying on jewelry, rehearsing her speech in front of the mirror. Tomorrow will be an unforgettable day, she said. Everyone will see what a wonderful family we have. Estrella nodded and smiled while inside everything compressed from the approaching decision. But there was no choice, neither for her nor for the children. On the day of the anniversary, Consuelo got up at 5 in the morning. She was going to go to the beauty salon, then to the restaurant to control the final preparations. Fabian, you'll come with me, she commanded, and let Estrelita clean up the apartment and prepare everything for the guests' arrival. What guests? Estrella didn't understand. Aren't we all going to be at the restaurant? Oh, come now, dear. After the banquet, the closest ones will drop by our place for coffee. About 20 people, no more. Another surprise, another burden. Estrella silently nodded and went to prepare breakfast for the family. The anniversary day had arrived, and with it approached the hour of reckoning. For everyone. The morning of the anniversary day turned out overcast. Estrella woke up from quiet rustling in the hallway. Consuelo was already fussing with her ceremonial outfit, hanging parts of the costume on all available hooks and handles. Estrelita, you're not sleeping. Perfect. Her mother-in-law peeked into the living room, noticing movement on the sofa. I need your help with the fastener on the dress cover. These designers make such inconvenient zippers. Estrella silently got up, rubbing her stiff neck. The living room sofa where she had been sleeping in recent years was completely unsuitable for proper rest. But complaining was pointless. Consuelo believed that the bedroom rightfully belonged to her and her son, and the daughter-in-law was perfectly well arranged as it was. While Estrella struggled with the stubborn zipper on the cover, her mother-in-law continued giving instructions. After breakfast, I'm going to the salon. At 12, a limousine will pick me up and take me to the restaurant. Fabian should be there at 1 to control the cake and champagne. The children, at 3 when guests start gathering. She spoke this in the tone of a general before a decisive battle. And you, Estrelita? Her mother-in-law paused, as if deciding the fate of a secondary character in her grandiose production. And you will clean up the apartment for the evening. I did tell you that after the banquet, the closest ones will drop by our place. Everything needs to shine. And be sure to buy fresh flowers and fruits and champagne. Another bottle just in case. Fine, Estrella answered briefly, finally managing the zipper. And yes, Consuelo turned in the doorway. I hope you finally found a decent dress. Last time at the Moreno family birthday, you wore something completely budget. Estrella remained silent. In 15 years, she had learned not to respond to such jabs. Besides, today she completely didn't care what her mother-in-law thought about her wardrobe. Breakfast passed in an atmosphere of general excitement. Sebastian and Catalina competed in discussing which of their friends would come to the celebration. Fabian nervously checked his to-do list on his phone. Consuelo presided at the head of the table, periodically adjusting her hairstyle and admiring her manicure done the day before. Sebastianito, little gold, you didn't forget that you should give a toast? She asked her grandson. I didn't forget, Grandma. I even memorized it, the boy answered proudly. My smart boy, Consuelo beamed. And you, Catalinita, remember about the song? Your little voice will touch all the guests. Catalina nodded, clearly embarrassed by the upcoming performance, but not daring to object to grandmother. Estrella silently served the children arepa with cheese, poured hot chocolate, cut mango, and papaya. She had long felt not like part of the family, but like service staff, and today only intensified this feeling. Will Mom also give a toast? Catalina suddenly asked, turning to Estrella. An awkward pause hung in the air. Consuelo pursed her lips. Dear, we have so many speakers, she said gently. Your mom is so busy with all the preparations. I think it will be easier for her to just enjoy the evening. Yes, of course, Estrella quickly agreed, noticing the relief on her mother-in-law's face. And anyway, Consuelo added, Estrellita will help us more if she prepares the apartment for the evening reception. Right, dear? Estrella nodded again, avoiding direct eye contact with her mother-in-law. Consuelo clearly didn't want to see her daughter-in-law in the center of attention at her celebration. Well, this wouldn't happen, but for completely different reasons than her mother-in-law thought. After breakfast, Consuelo began getting ready for the beauty salon. She put on her best suit, took her designer bag, checked her makeup. Fabian, you didn't forget about the money? She asked her son. We'll need to pay the restaurant and pastry chef today. Everything's under control, Mom, Fabian reported. I'll call the bank, clarify about transfers, and everything will be ready. Wonderful, Consuelo beamed. You know, son, I'm so happy that I have such a wonderful family. You and the children. Everyone tried so hard to make this day special. Estrella turned away, pretending to be busy washing dishes. She, as usual, wasn't included in the concept of wonderful family. However, today this was even convenient. When Consuelo finally left and Fabian rushed off on errands after her, Estrella was left alone with the children. Sebastian sat in his room rehearsing his toast. Catalina spun in front of the mirror, trying on her new dress. Mom, do you already know what you'll wear? The girl asked, peeking into the kitchen. Not yet, sunshine. Estrella smiled at her daughter. I'm thinking something simple and comfortable. But this is such an important day. Catalina was surprised. Grandma says everyone should be beautiful, like on the red carpet. I'll try not to let Grandma down, Estrella answered quietly, feeling her heart compress from the upcoming conversation with the children. She sat down at the kitchen table and gestured for her daughter to sit next to her. Catalinita, we need to talk. Please call Sebastian. Catalina blinked in surprise but obediently went for her brother. In a minute, both children were sitting across from their mother, looking anxiously at her unusually serious face. What happened, Mom? Sebastian asked. If this is about my last math test, I promise to improve. No, dear, it's not about that, Estrella sighed deeply. Listen to me carefully. Today we'll have to leave home for some time. Leave where? Catalina didn't understand. Aren't we going to Grandma's anniversary? No, we're not going, Estrella said firmly. We'll go to another place, for a short time. It will be cozy and peaceful there. But what about Grandma? She'll be upset, Sebastian exclaimed. I'm supposed to give a toast. I know, dear, but sometimes you have to make difficult choices. Estrella tried her best to speak calmly. Do you trust me? The children looked at each other, clearly confused. Of course, Mom, Sebastian said uncertainly. Then go pack the most necessary things. Only the most needed. Clothes for several days, toothbrushes, favorite books or toys. Everything should fit in small backpacks. Does Dad know? Catalina asked, and tears glistened in her eyes. Dad will know everything soon, Estrella answered carefully. Please pack. I'll explain everything later. The children hesitantly went to their room. Estrella heard their muffled whispers. They clearly didn't understand what was happening, but felt the seriousness of the situation. When the children started packing, Estrella proceeded with her part of the plan. She methodically went around the apartment, collecting necessary documents, the children's birth certificates, passports, insurance policies, bank cards. She carefully put all this in a folder and placed it in her bag. Then she checked her phone. The banking app showed that all cards were active, all accounts accessible. Estrella went into settings and checked that her phone number was linked to all accounts as primary. Fabian had never been interested in financial details, completely trusting his wife to manage money. Today, this would play a decisive role in her plan. At noon, the phone rang. Estrella saw Fabian's name on the screen and hesitated for a second. Then she answered anyway. "Estrella, are you home?" Her husband's voice sounded nervous and wound up. "Yes, with the children." "Great. Listen, I have an important request. Mom decided she needs a different hairstyle. She didn't like what they did at the salon. She's coming home now. Will you help her get herself in order? You know how to style hair beautifully." Estrella felt everything inside turn cold. Consuelo was coming home, right now when she planned to leave with the children. "When will she be here?" she only asked. "In about 20 minutes, and I need to urgently go to the restaurant. There are some problems with guest seating. Will you help Mom?" "Of course," Estrella answered automatically. "You're the best." Fabian exhaled with relief and hung up. Estrella glanced at the clock. There was little time left. "Children, pack faster," she called, looking into the nursery. Sebastian and Catalina looked at her in confusion. They sat on the bed holding half-packed backpacks. "Mom, I don't understand," Sebastian said slowly. "Why do we have to leave?" "What happened?" "Grandma will be offended," Catalina added, and her lower lip trembled. Estrella sat down next to the children and hugged them both. "Listen to me," she said quietly. "Sometimes adults make decisions that seem strange. But I'm your mother, and I'll never do anything that could harm you. Do you believe me?" The children nodded uncertainly. "Then trust me. We need to leave before Grandma arrives. I'll explain everything later, I promise." The next 15 minutes passed in feverish packing. Estrella helped the children pack the most necessary things while collecting her own things. Several changes of clothes, chargers, toiletries. All the most important things fit in 3 small backpacks. When they were almost ready, the doorbell rang. Estrella froze. "Is that Grandma?" Catalina exclaimed joyfully and rushed to the door. "Stop!" Estrella caught her daughter by the hand. "I'll open it myself. And you and Sebastian take your backpacks and wait by the service exit." "We have a service exit?" Sebastian was surprised. "Service stairs," Estrella explained. "That door at the end of the hallway, next to the storage room. Wait for me there and don't make noise." The bell rang again, more insistently. The children with frightened faces took their backpacks and tiptoed to the indicated door. Estrella took a deep breath, fixed her hair, and went to open the door. Consuelo stood on the threshold, irritated and tense. Her hair really didn't look its best. Apparently, she had tried to fix the unsuccessful hairstyle herself. "Finally," she exclaimed, entering the apartment. "I thought you weren't home. Look what those masters did to my hair. Everything needs to be fixed urgently. Where's the hairdryer? Where are my curlers?" "In the bathroom," Estrella answered, feverishly thinking how to buy time. "Go there. I'll join you in a moment. Just let me get a comb." "Fine, just hurry. We only have half an hour before the limousine arrives." Consuelo went to the bathroom, taking off her jacket as she walked. Estrella rushed to the children who were obediently waiting by the service door. "Go downstairs," she whispered. "I'll come out through the main entrance. We'll meet at the store on the corner, just quietly." The children nodded, clearly frightened by the need to secretly leave home. Estrella carefully opened the door to the stairs, let the children out, and quietly closed it behind them. Then she quickly grabbed her bag, checked for keys and phone, and headed to the bathroom. Consuelo sat in front of the mirror, critically examining her reflection. "These modern stylists completely don't know how to work with women of my level," she complained. "Can you imagine?" she suggested I do a bouffant at my age. I immediately told Fabian that everything needed to be redone urgently. "Yes, I understand." Estrella mechanically took the comb and began fixing her mother-in-law's hair. "Don't worry, we'll fix everything." Her hands worked automatically. In 15 years, she had learned to do hairstyles and styling for Consuelo. Now these skills came in handy like never before. "Just please, no fantasies," her mother-in-law continued instructing. "Elegant and prestigious, so everyone can see that they're looking at a lady of position. Maybe you'll do it like in the photograph in that magazine. Remember, I showed you?" "I remember," Estrella nodded. working with her mother-in-law's hair. She did everything quickly but with quality, understanding that how soon she could leave the apartment depended on this. Thoughts about the children waiting on the street made her heart pound like crazy. In 20 minutes, the hairstyle was ready. Consuelo critically examined the result from all sides. "Well, for homework, it's not bad," she graciously concluded. "Of course, a professional stylist would have done better, but for lack of choice." "I'm glad you like it," Estrella began putting away the tools. "Now you need to hurry. The limousine will be here soon." "Yes, yes, you're right." Consuelo got up and headed toward the bathroom exit. "Where are my shoes? Are the children ready?" "Sebastian! Catalina!" Estrella felt everything inside turn cold. "The children are at friends," she said quickly. "Didn't Fabian tell you? He'll pick them up on the way to the restaurant." "What? Why are they at friends on such an important day?" Consuelo was indignant. "They should be home getting ready." "Catalina's hairstyle isn't even done yet." "Fabian organized everything," Estrella continued improvising. "Catalina's girlfriends are helping her with hairstyle and makeup, and Sebastian is rehearsing his toast with classmates." Consuelo frowned, clearly displeased with such a turn of events, but a second later her face brightened again. "Well, if Fabianito decided that way, he knows how important this day is for me." Estrella barely held back a sigh of relief. "I also need to leave soon," she said, looking at her watch. "I still need to stop by for flowers for the evening reception." "Yes, yes, don't forget." Consuelo was already absorbed in choosing jewelry laid out on the dressing table. "And don't forget champagne, and buy beautiful fruits. Not like last time." "Of course." Estrella took her bag and headed for the exit. "I'll take care of everything." "And try to look decent at the banquet," Consuelo shouted after her. "Don't disgrace the family." Estrella didn't answer anything. She quietly opened the front door and left the apartment, trying not to slam it. In the elevator, she finally allowed herself to breathe deeply. The first part of the plan was completed. Now she needed to find the children and move forward. Leaving the building, she immediately saw Sebastian and Catalina huddled together by the store on the corner. Seeing their mother, they rushed to her. "Mom, what's happening?" Sebastian asked, and unusual tension sounded in his voice. "Why are we running away from Grandma?" "We're not running away," Estrella said gently, hugging the children. "We're just taking a break. Come on, I'll explain everything on the way." They walked down the street, moving away from home. Estrella held the children's hands tightly, feeling how tense and confused they were. "Where are we going?" Catalina asked. "First to the bus stop," Estrella answered, "and then to a small hotel where we'll spend the night. It will be like a little adventure." "What about Grandma's anniversary?" Sebastian persisted. "She was waiting for it so much. And Dad, he'll look for us." "Dad will know where we are soon," Estrella said, trying to speak confidently. "And Grandma will manage without us. She'll have many guests." "But she'll be upset." Tears appeared in Catalina's eyes. Estrella stopped and squatted in front of the children, looking into their eyes. "Listen to me," she said quietly. "I know all this looks strange, but sometimes adults have to make difficult decisions. Today, Grandma and Dad didn't act very nicely toward us, and we need some time for them to understand their mistake." "What mistake?" Sebastian looked at his mother with wide eyes. Estrella sighed, understanding that the children needed at least a partial explanation. "Grandma decided that her celebration was more important than us. She wanted us to leave home while the guests were there." "What do you mean, leave home?" Sebastian didn't understand. "But we were supposed to be at the anniversary." "Not exactly." Estrella chose her words carefully. "Grandma wanted guests to come to our place after the restaurant, and she said there wouldn't be enough room for everyone in the apartment, so you and I had to leave." "Leave where?" Catalina gasped. "Anywhere. To friends, to neighbors, to the park." Estrella tried to speak calmly, although inside everything boiled from memories of the morning conversation. "Grandma said we just needed to disappear for the evening while she received guests." "But this is our home," Sebastian was indignant, and Estrella was surprised to see anger flash in her son's eyes. "She can't kick us out." "Turns out she can," Estrella said quietly, and Dad agreed with her. This was the most painful part. In the morning when Consuelo casually announced the verdict, "The apartment is needed for guests. Let her go with the children to friends." Fabian didn't even try to object. He just silently took the children's things out to the entrance. Backpacks that, as he thought, would be needed for a short walk. Dad also wanted to kick us out. Catalina looked at her mother with huge eyes full of tears. He couldn't say no to Grandma. Estrella hugged her daughter. That's why it's better for us to be separate now, so they understand that you can't do this. Sebastian stood silently, digesting the information. Then he nodded decisively. Okay, Mom, I'm with you. And Catalina, too. Right, Catalina? The girl sniffled and nodded. Where you go, I go too, she said seriously, squeezing her mother's hand tighter. Estrella felt a lump rising in her throat. Her children, who had always been closer to Grandma with her gifts and promises, now chose Mom. This was worth all the risks. Thank you, my good ones, she smiled through the tears that welled up. Now let's catch a taxi to the hotel. I booked us a cozy room where we can rest. They headed to the main street where it was easier to catch a car. Estrella constantly checked her phone, expecting calls from Fabian or her mother-in-law, but so far it was quiet. Apparently, they hadn't discovered the absence yet. They managed to catch a taxi quickly. The driver helped load the backpacks into the trunk and smiled at the family. Where are we going? Going on vacation? Something like that, Estrella answered. Hotel Avenida, please. The children quieted down in the back seat, still processing what had happened. Estrella secretly wiped away tears, looking out the window at the city rushing by. 15 years of marriage had ended like this. Fleeing from their own home on her mother-in-law's anniversary day, with 2 confused children and 3 backpacks of belongings. But there was no alternative. This morning, when Consuelo so matter-of-factly announced her verdict, the apartment is needed for guests, let her go with the children too. Friends, something finally broke inside. Hotel Avenida turned out to be a pleasant 3-star hotel on a quiet street 20 minutes drive from home. Estrella had booked a family room in advance, with 2 separate bedrooms and a small living room. Now, looking at the children settled on the sofa in the living room, she was grateful for her foresight. It's even better here than at home, Catalina noted, looking around the cozy room, like we're on vacation. Yes, think of it exactly that way, Estrella smiled, unpacking things. Little unplanned vacation. Sebastian was silent. Settled in an armchair with his phone, he periodically glanced at the screen. Mom, will Dad look for us? He finally asked. Definitely, Estrella nodded. But first he needs to understand that we won't return to our old life, that you can't treat people the way they treated us. She took the bank cards from her bag and laid them out on the table. 5 plastic rectangles. 5 keys to financial freedom. The cards were issued in her name, since Fabian considered finances a boring occupation and completely entrusted money management to his wife. Now this turned out to be a key advantage. Estrella opened her phone, went into the banking app, and began methodically blocking the cards, one after another. She didn't need to call. It was enough to press a button in the app to temporarily block each one. She left only one active, her personal one, which held a relatively small amount. What are you doing, Mom? Catalina asked, watching the manipulations. Ensuring us a safe future, Estrella answered, trying to speak calmly. Don't worry, everything will be fine. As soon as she finished with the cards, the phone burst into a trill of an incoming call. Fabian's name appeared on the screen. Estrella exchanged glances with the children and took a deep breath. I'll answer in the next room, she said, and you can choose what we'll order for lunch. Closing the bedroom door behind her, she finally answered. Yes, Fabi. Estrella, where are you? Her husband's voice sounded panicked. Mom arrived at the restaurant alone. She says the children are at friends, but I called all their classmates. No one knows anything. What's happening? We're safe, Estrella answered calmly. The children and I. What safety? What are you talking about? Fabian was almost shouting. Tell me immediately where you are. Guests are already gathering. Mom is nervous. Her blood pressure might rise. That doesn't concern me, Estrella said even more calmly. This morning your mother announced to me that the children and I should disappear from the apartment because guests were coming in the evening. You confirmed this by taking our things out to the entrance. Well, we disappeared, only not for the evening, but forever. Silence reigned on the other end of the line, broken only by heavy breathing. Estrella, have you lost your mind? Fabian finally squeezed out. What forever? This is just an anniversary. Mom wanted to organize everything beautifully so there would be room for guests. Room for guests, Estrella echoed. And the children and I are in the way. We were supposed to just disappear while the queen receives her courtiers. For 15 years I endured such treatment, Fabi. For 15 years I was nobody in my own home, but no more. I don't understand what you're talking about, Fabian said in confusion. Mom always treated you well. You're the one who always made up some grievances. Fine, Estrella cut him off. Then tell me, where were your children supposed to be right now according to your mother's plan? On the street? At neighbors? In the entrance? Temporarily at friends. It's only for a few hours, Fabian defended himself. Temporarily at friends, Estrella repeated, in the rain. Without prior arrangement, just to free up the apartment for guests. And you think this is normal? Mom just didn't think. She was so busy with preparations. She thought everything through perfectly, Estrella said harshly, and so did you. You both decided that the children and I are expendable material for your celebration, that we can be thrown out on the street when it's convenient. Well, now live with the consequences. Estrella, stop dramatizing! Notes of irritation appeared in Fabian's voice. Just tell me where you are, and I'll come get you. Mom is waiting for the grandchildren at the anniversary. No, Estrella answered firmly. We won't come. Not today, not tomorrow. What's wrong with you? Fabian broke into shouting. You're never satisfied with anything. You always complicate everything. Mom is right. You were never part of the family. You always stood aside and looked for something to complain about. These words hit harder than she expected, but Estrella only straightened her back more. Thank you for the honesty, Fabi, she said. At least now you're not pretending. I really was never part of your family. You and Mom were a family, and I was an accidental hindrance. But now everything will change. What do you mean, will change? Fabian asked suspiciously. It means I'm filing for divorce, Estrella said calmly, and for property division, and for determining the children's place of residence with me. Have you lost your mind? Because of some anniversary? Because Mom wanted to receive guests beautifully? No, Fabi, Estrella answered tiredly. Because of 15 years of humiliation. Because you never once stood up for me. Because your mother's opinion was always more important to you than your wife and children's well-being. At that moment, there was a knock on the room door. Estrella quickly went to the living room and saw a waiter with a cart on which stood plates of food and juice bottles. Your order, the young man smiled. Where should I put it? Guys, did you already order? Estrella was surprised, covering the phone's microphone. I ordered, Sebastian said proudly. Pasta for Catalina, steak for you, pizza for me, and juices for everyone. Good job, Estrella sincerely praised her son, letting the waiter through. Estrella, who are you talking to? Fabian demanded from the phone. Is that the children? Give them the phone. Now isn't the best time, Estrella answered, watching the waiter arrange dishes on the table. We're about to have lunch. What lunch? Fabian exploded. Mom's anniversary is in an hour. The courier brought the cake, and the cards aren't working. I have nothing to pay with. Estrella smiled. Her plan was starting to work. Oh, that's what you're talking about, she drawled. Yes, I blocked the cards. All except one. My personal one. There's little money there, but probably enough for the cake. You blocked the cards. Fabian seemed to be choking with rage. You have no right. I do, Estrella calmly objected. All the cards are issued in my name. You didn't want to deal with finances yourself, remember? You understand these matters better, dear. Unblock them immediately, Fabian roared. Otherwise what? Estrella interrupted. Will you sue me? Excellent. We'll discuss there how you and your mother plan to throw the children out of the house on a rainy evening. How for 15 years your mother bossed me around while you stayed silent. How you spent family money on mommy's whims without asking me. Fabian fell silent. You could hear someone speaking agitatedly in the background. Apparently, Consuelo was demanding explanations. Estrella, he finally said, lowering his voice, let's not be silly. Unblock the cards, come home with the children, and we'll discuss everything. Mom will apologize. I was wrong too. But don't ruin the celebration now. You know how Mom was waiting for this day. I know, Estrella nodded, though her husband couldn't see her. For 3 months she prepared. Ordered a restaurant, invited half the city, bought a dress for $800, and today she decided that I and your children should disappear from our own home. You know what? Let her now explain to the guests why the celebration is being canceled, why the $500 cake will have to be returned, why the grandchildren won't perform with congratulations. Estrella, please, pleading notes appeared in Fabian's voice. Mom is in a terrible state. She might have an attack. She won't, Estrella answered coldly. Your mother has iron health, strong nerves, and a heart of stone. She'll survive. What do you want? Fabian finally asked. What are you trying to achieve with this blackmail? I want justice, Estrella answered simply. I'll unblock the cards after I receive sincere apologies from you and your mother, and after you sign a divorce application. Divorce? Have you lost your mind? No, I've just come to my senses. Estrella looked out the window where fine drizzling rain was falling. For 15 years, I was a shadow in your family. Today, the cup overflowed. I'm not returning to that life anymore. Muffled noise came from the phone. Apparently, Fabian covered the microphone and was arguing with someone. A minute later, he spoke again, and his voice changed, became cold and detached. Fine, Estrella, he began formally. If you need apologies so much, I offer them. I was wrong to fulfill Mother's request without discussing it with you. Is that all? No, not all, Estrella answered calmly. Your mother must apologize personally and you must agree to divorce. Mom is not in a state to talk right now, Fabian said sharply, and I'm not going to sign any divorce applications. This is blackmail, Estrella. You're using the children and money to manipulate me. How interesting, Estrella smirked. When your mother used children and money for 15 years to manipulate me, that was normal. But when I want justice, it's blackmail. Well, call it what you want. My demand remains the same. Apologies from Consuelo and your consent to divorce. Otherwise, the cards remain blocked. You have no idea what problems you'll have, Fabian hissed. Mom is already calling her lawyer. You'll take children away from their father, destroy the family, all because of some stupid grievance. No, Fabi, Estrella said gently. You destroyed the family. Today, when you took the children's things out to the entrance, fulfilling your mother's whim, and all 15 years before that, when you chose her, not me. Don't try to shift responsibility. At that moment, a woman's voice sounded in the phone, piercing, demanding. Consuelo had clearly taken the phone from her son. Estrella, return my grandchildren immediately, she practically screamed. You have no right to hold them, and unblock the cards right now. Do you understand that you're ruining the most important day of my life? Hello, Consuelo, Estrella answered calmly. I'm glad you had the strength to take the phone. That means you're capable of apologizing to me. Apologize? For what? Her mother-in-law seemed to be choking with indignation. For tolerating you in our family for 15 years? For allowing you to live in my son's apartment? For helping raise children while you ran around on your business? No, Estrella answered just as calmly. For deciding today to throw me and the children out of the house to make room for guests. For treating me like a servant for 15 years, not like your son's wife. For turning the children against me. For all of this. What nonsense. Consuelo was indignant. These are just your fantasies. You were always ungrateful, always looking for reasons to be offended. Fabian, I was right. She was never part of our family. You see, Estrella smiled, you said everything yourself. I was never part of your family, so I won't return. And the cards will remain blocked until you apologize and until Fabian agrees to divorce. You. Consuelo seemed unable to find words from rage. I'll sue you. I'll make sure you're stripped of parental rights. You're crazy. Very interesting. Estrella looked at the children who were watching her anxiously. Try it. But for now, will you apologize or not? The guests must already be gathering. The cake is waiting. The musicians have arrived. Some sounds came from the phone, screaming, scuffling. Then Fabian spoke again. Estrella, this is crossing all boundaries. Mom became ill. She's shaking. Is this what you wanted? No, Estrella answered honestly. I wanted apologies and consent to divorce. Fine, Fabian said after a pause. I agree to divorce, and I apologize for myself and for Mom. Now unblock the cards. Apologies must be sincere, Fabi. Estrella shook her head. From you and from Consuelo. And consent to divorce, in writing. When you're ready, call. With these words, she ended the call and turned off the phone. Turning to the children, she saw they had frozen over untouched food, looking at her with wide eyes. Mom, Catalina said quietly, do you really want to divorce Dad? Estrella approached the table and sat next to the children, taking their hands. Yes, dear, I'm afraid that would be better for all of us. And we won't see Grandma anymore? Sebastian asked, and Estrella was surprised to hear not regret, but hope in his voice. If you want to, you'll see her, Estrella answered, but we won't live with her anymore. Where will we live? Catalina asked practically. First here in the hotel, Estrella answered, and then I'll rent us an apartment. And when everything is settled with the divorce and property division, maybe we'll buy our own. What about Dad? Sebastian looked worried. Will he see us? Of course, Estrella said confidently. He's your father, and he loves you. He just doesn't always know how to show this love properly, and too often lets Grandma decide for him. I heard her screaming at you on the phone, Catalina said quietly. That's wrong, right? Yes, sunshine, that's wrong, Estrella hugged her daughter. Adults shouldn't talk to each other like that, and they shouldn't talk to children like that either. Mom, Sebastian suddenly said seriously, I'm glad we left. I've wanted to tell you for a long time that Grandma says bad things about you when you're not there and makes Dad agree with her. These words hit Estrella right in the heart. She knew Consuelo was turning the children against her, but hearing this from her son was painful. Thank you for your honesty, dear. She stroked Sebastian's head. Now everything will be different, I promise. They finally began their lunch, which had already started getting cold. They ate in silence, each absorbed in their own thoughts. Estrella periodically glanced at the turned-off phone, but wasn't in a hurry to turn it on. Let Fabian and Consuelo feel what it's like to be helpless in the face of other people's decisions. Closer to evening, she finally turned on the phone and found 30 missed calls and many messages. From Fabian, from her mother-in-law's colleagues, even from neighbors who had been involved in the search. It seemed the anniversary had turned into a real disaster. Estrella opened the last message from Fabian. Estrella, I beg you, turn on your phone. Mom is in the hospital with a nervous breakdown. The guests have dispersed. I lost my voice explaining to everyone that there was a family misunderstanding. Please unblock at least one card. I need to pay for the restaurant and cake, otherwise there will be a scandal. I agree to divorce if you want it. Just let me know that the children are okay. Estrella thought. Then she briefly replied, the children are fine. I'll unblock one card for the amount to pay for the restaurant and cake. Send me the bills so I know the exact figures. Tomorrow we'll talk about divorce. And yes, I need written consent. Photograph the application and send it. A few minutes later came a reply. A scan of restaurant bills for an impressive amount and a photo of a handwritten application agreeing to dissolution of marriage. Estrella sighed and went into the banking app. She unblocked one of the cards and limited the withdrawal limit to the amount specified in the bills, plus a small reserve. Then she wrote to Fabian again, card unblocked with limited limit. This will be enough to pay the bills. Tomorrow we'll call to discuss the formalities of divorce and property division. A short thank you came in response. Estrella put down the phone and approached the window. The rain had intensified, drumming on the glass. Somewhere out there, in the dank darkness of the autumn evening, her former life was collapsing. And a new one was beginning. Unknown, frightening, but already feeling more real than everything that had been before. The following 3 years were difficult, but Estrella never once regretted her decision. The divorce was formalized quickly. Fabian didn't create obstacles, clearly under his mother's influence, who was eager to get rid of the ungrateful daughter-in-law. But the property division turned into a prolonged war. Consuelo, having recovered from the hospital, hired an expensive lawyer and began legal proceedings. She demanded to recognize Estrella as an unworthy mother, strip her of parental rights, and sue for alimony in favor of Fabian as the only conscientious parent. Estrella turned out to be prepared for this battle. Her small advertising agency had developed useful connections over the years of work. Among the clients was a law firm specializing in family law. They took on her case on very favorable terms. The most difficult turned out to be the business. Estrella foresaw that Consuelo would try to get a share in the advertising agency through court as jointly acquired property. Therefore, a week before the first court hearing, she transferred the agency to the children, leaving herself only the position of managing director with a fixed salary. This was a risky step, but it worked. When Consuelo's lawyer triumphantly demanded to include the business in the inventory of property subject to division, it turned out there was nothing left to divide. The formal owners were minors Sebastian and Catalina. "This is fraud," Consuelo screamed at the hearing. "She specifically transferred everything to the children to deceive the court." "This is care for the children's future," Estrella parried. "I provided them with financial independence in case something happens to me." Nothing prevented Fabian from being interested in the business and participating in its development all these years, but he preferred to stay aside. The court recognized the business transfer as legal, since it occurred before the start of the divorce proceedings. Fabian, watching this battle from the sidelines, gradually lost interest in the confrontation. Unlike his mother, he wasn't burning with desire to destroy his former wife. He was more concerned with how to maintain relationships with the children, who were increasingly distancing themselves from him. Sebastian and Catalina, torn from the toxic atmosphere of grandmother's house, blossomed. They no longer lived in the shadow of the Consuelo cult. The children began to laugh and rejoice a lot. They became free.